moved here, I was an executive producer at Dubai One, which was the only English TV station. And this is a story that I don't think I'll ever forget. For anyone who's not familiar with being an exec producer, you're pretty much the top of the hierarchy. You are the person that everyone kind of is nice to. Everyone wants to, they want to make sure you know who they are, because they're hoping that you can help feature them on TV in some way, right? So you're pretty popular. You get invited everywhere. And I'll never forget a phone call that I received after I left. I received this phone call, and this PR lady rang and said, Reem, we've got this amazing VIP exclusive event. It's red carpet. Your name is on the list. You need to be there. And I just left my position. So, I said, well, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate the invitation. You should probably know that I'm no longer at the TV station. I'm not an exec producer anymore. She went, oh. Do you think the presenter of the show would want to come? I went, yeah, you can call her, you can invite her. Okay, great, thanks, bye. And just like that, I was uninvited, just like that. And it really taught me a very important lesson. I mean, I always knew, you always hear the media industry is fickle, right? But it really taught me that people really don't care. It's all about position. And the main lesson for me at that point was really understanding that the only brand that stays with you your entire life is your own, right? So if you are currently leveraging a position, a title, a life situation, that's not going to be with you forever. So what are you building for yourself, right? And that really stuck with me from that point. Stuck with me so much that I then built my own company. So I started my own company, TI22 Films. It's very much in the TV media space, and we produce a lot of content for a lot of brands, but also what I started to realize was it's not just about the TV world. And I realized this over 10 years ago. I realized that there's a whole ecosystem happening on YouTube. And I realized the importance of us starting to transition from broadcast to YouTube, which is why I launched a second brand. I launched a second brand called Dubai On Demand. And this was a fascinating journey because I believed it so much. And I would go around to different brands and I'd be like, oh, we're starting this YouTube channel. It's going to be amazing. And the number one question I kept being asked is, are your shows going to be on TV? And I kept saying, no, but this is on YouTube. It's going to be better. It's going to be better because you can track it and you can target people. And they're like, no, we thought you were going to be on TV. And it was even more annoying because I had such amazing personalities. A lot of the TV personalities we worked with actually jumped on board the YouTube content we create. We had a lot of PR. So we were in every publication. I even made it onto the front cover of a magazine. It was all very PR heavy. And we were out there. We were visible. And as you can see, we even invested money on having like very high-end shoots, and it really was a brand. It was a true brand. However, we still failed. We still failed because I poured in so much money into creating YouTube content, but no one believed YouTube content would work. This was 2014, right? 2014. But like all amazing stories, does anyone know how long it takes for a bamboo shoot to grow? So you plant it, and then 5 years later, that's when you start seeing the bamboo shoot, right? So 10 years later, 2 bamboo shoots later, and also YouTube is now 20 years old. And in 2025, you can see that YouTube is now in a completely different place. 5.1 billion videos with over 360 hours of content uploaded every single minute. More than 114 million active YouTube channels. And I know we've got some YouTube experts who are going to be digging even deeper into this. It is what we're now all calling the creator economy. When you hear the words creator economy, what does that mean to you? I truly believe it's about taking things into your own hands, right? If you look at the industry, it's estimated to grow to 480 billion by 2027. What that means is that experts like yourselves now have an opportunity to create content and be out there and build the same audiences that media houses used to years ago. So this is an industry, and the reason I wanted to share this specific statistic is because there are all these people who think, oh, it's oversaturated. It's been around, like, what's the point in me adding more content to this ecosystem? We're only halfway, right? So this is gonna be a whole wave of new content coming in. The world is changing. And just to illustrate just how much it's changing, many of us, I can see I'm amongst people in my demographic, which is exciting. Nowadays, I'm amongst a much younger demographic. But, we all grew up with radios, and now we've all seen, versus the fact that we're now in the podcast space. And us being in Podster today, podcast consumption doubled last year, reaching 7.3 billion. That is huge, right? That is huge. So if you're not tapping into this space, as already illustrated, you're missing an opportunity. Even in the TV space, and I'm really, we've actually got a streaming expert in the audience today, but we all consume traditional TV, but nowadays everyone is consuming content through different streaming platforms. Although it might interest you to know, I don't know if this statistic is current, but it might interest you to know that 52% of people are watching YouTube on a TV channel, right? So you might think you're not consuming it, but you are, just in a different way. Right? So it goes to show that when people say TV is dying, I don't believe the TV experience is dying. I think they're just watching different content on the TV, right? And it's coming from different places. You've even got things like a podcast category that's going to be introduced to the Golden Globes next year. I don't know if everyone is aware of that, but that's how seriously the podcast industry is becoming. And then you've got the whole world of AI. Don't get me started on AI, but the Oscars are about to allow AI-assisted movies. And I don't particularly want to talk too much about AI because I think that opens up a whole can of worms. But I do want to mention the fact that the way we create content has changed and the way we search for content has changed. And I just want to ask a very quick question. Have you Googled or searched for yourself on ChatGPT lately?
Yes, I did.
You did? Who has done it? A few of you. And how often do you do it?
Once a month.
Once a month. So the point being is that if you haven't done it, you should, and see what comes back. See what comes back, because are you allowing the universe to dictate the message, or are you putting the message out there of how you want to be represented and what you want to be known for? And I think the more content you put out there, the more you're able to navigate and tell that story, right? The less content you put out there, you're allowing other people to create the story for you. Or worse, there's no content out there and nobody knows who you are. Right? Because one of my favorite things to say is if you're not visible, you're invisible. So I want to very quickly run through some stats in case I haven't convinced you yet. In case you're still sitting here going, I don't need, you're half convinced because you made it here, but you're still thinking like, do I need to do this? So some big stats for you. If a company's leadership is active on social media, any guesses on the percentage increase in trust in that company? 70. It actually was 82 recently, so it's just dropped. But 70 is still a very, very high number, in terms of building trust. Next one. People are X% more likely to buy from brands with strong personal visibility. 57, right? Still high. You're still over 50%. So the way I see it is worth putting yourself out there because people connect with you as an individual. Not just that, personalization, speaking directly to your audience, can boost the response and call to action by more than 200%, which is why we're seeing this whole boom in the podcast industry as well. Public speaking boosts your credibility by 25 to 50%. Hosting a podcast increases your audience trust by 20 to 30%, right? It's probably one of the best lead generation tools as well, because that's when people hear more context and reach out. So isn't it worth doing?
100%.
Oh my God, no one convinced me. Isn't it worth doing? Okay, it's worth doing. I've just given you all the stats. But anyway, this I find even more interesting. Any guesses the percentage of people who are more likely to do business with a company if they've watched a video of the CEO? 66. I still think that's very high. So I'll often work with people and they say, oh, do I really need to be on video? Oh, do I really need to be the face? Oh, I have a team. I'm like, sure, you don't need to be, but there's a 66% higher chance that people are going to connect with you and want to work with you if they see you, right? So it is the era that we're in. It has to be you. And what I find even more interesting, just bringing this back to YouTube, and this is from a few months ago, but as I started off saying, YouTube literally is at the top. People perceive it here as being Netflix or as being any one of these other platforms being the most viewed, but it's actually YouTube, which I find very interesting. And in most cases, they are driven by individuals. By country, by user, YouTube is still very, very high. So you want to be putting yourself out there and experimenting with even your podcasts on YouTube, because that's where you're seeing a lot of the growth. And the streaming space is just starting to grow, and we're starting to see more and more platforms pop up and more shows pop up. So I'm going to tell you why I'm sharing this, because I believe there's a journey that takes us all the way from our personal brand growth to larger viewership. So I'm someone who travels a lot to different conventions, and I've been in this industry a long time, and MIP are two events that happen in Cannes, and anyone in the industry will probably go to Cannes to find out what the latest is. I think I even bumped into you in Cannes, yeah. And so last year I went twice. Last year I went to two different events, and I want you to keep in mind, this is where the TV industry goes. This is where the TV industry goes. So you'd expect to go and hear all about the latest TV trends, right? Honest to God, the majority of sessions I went to were talking about YouTube. The majority, right? And it was a bit, given that I told you the story of where I started 10 years ago with Demand Demand, I was sitting there going, I told you this 10 years ago. But that's what's happening in the industry right now. So the main advice that I kept hearing over and over again was to take matters into your own hands. I kept hearing it because you have broadcasters who are not ready to actually commission or pay for new content. And then you've got a whole world of producers and content creators who want to be on TV and want to create this content. And the main piece of advice was like, go and do it. Go and do it on YouTube. And then if a broadcaster likes it, then you'll end up in a conversation, and then potentially it would grow and have a bigger audience, which means a lot of work, right? But it also means that you should start taking social platforms seriously. Because ultimately, even in the broadcast ecosystem, and I work in broadcast, we look at social platforms. You look at content creators, you look at thought leaders. Even on DXB Today, the daily show we produce, we actually look at people's profiles to say, oh, she's going to be a great guest on TV. She's going to be a great contact to have on. So it all positions you in a certain light. Interestingly, there's a whole world of interesting social content that's being picked up. This particular series, this lady, literally, if you watch it, it's super simple. It's super simple. She just recorded 100 videos, and every video is kind of telling a little bit more of her story of how her marriage didn't go well, right? But it's so addictive, and everyone watched it, and now that's being picked up, or maybe it already has been picked up. You've got a huge rise in mini dramas and micro dramas that are like a minute long each. And many of them are not produced very well. So like the quality of them is not particularly high, but they're growing a following, right? You have what I found really interesting is this show called The Poker Society, because it actually launched on YouTube in Jan 2024, and then it was picked up by a French channel later in the year. Again, the difference here is they actually did spend a lot of money on the show. Like the production of the show is very high end as opposed to the kind of the smaller shows. Another thing to leverage is if you happen to have celebrities in your network, or you happen to have well-known names, because Gordon Ramsay launched a whole new series only on YouTube. But what's interesting about this is that it was, I believe, funded by, I don't cook, but one of the kitchen appliances that's featured in the show is actually the brand partnership that funded the whole production. So we're seeing a whole wave of new content that's popping up on YouTube that you would have associated with TV previously, and ultimately more money is going in that direction because they're trying to get the attention of people who will ultimately get it on TV. Even brands like JD Sports experimented with this and started to create a short YouTube series last year. So we're seeing it more and more. It's nowhere near the level it needs to be, but at least it's starting. And given, I told you where I started 10 years ago, no one wanted to listen. Now people are starting to listen a little bit. So at least I can see a bit of a shift and a bit of an understanding. Obviously, there's the most recent example that everyone is aware of, which is, Mr. Beast and his YouTube channel, which is huge. But the fact that he was able to launch Beast Games, 50 million views in 25 days, reach #1 in Prime Video. He's probably not the best actual example because there's a lot of money that's pumped into all of his content. But at least it shows you that the journey is beginning, where people can create their own content, grow on YouTube, and make it onto a TV channel or a streaming platform. So how? Start partnering with brands, right? And start looking at how to create the content you want, grow an audience, and get the attention of broadcasters if you still need to. Because you may discover you may not need to. If you're growing at the right pace and you're getting the brand partnerships, However, I know at least in our generation, TV still has that perception of being like grade A. Like many people still want to make it on TV, but I would argue that that's not where all the audience is, right? We're watching it on a TV set, but it's not actually produced on TV. And also sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes there are very big flops that don't work. I heard about this show, Succeed or Die Trying, which had Richard Branson on it, which actually was very focused on pushing people out of their limits, and it tanked. So, sometimes I sit there and I think, if Richard Branson can tank on a business show, we're okay. It's okay if things don't always go, things don't go the way we want them to. But we do need to keep exploring new distribution channels and new technology. So what I want you to do, because again, I want to bring this all the way back to your own visibility, is just a little mini self-assessment of where you are today, right? So just a few questions for you to think about. Is my digital presence aligned with my seniority, right? Is it aligned with my seniority? Do people associate me with a clear area of expertise? Clear area, right? And sometimes that means being super niche, right? Because ultimately, like I used to go around saying, I'm a content coach, I'm a content creator. Content means so many things to so many different people and is so big. Now I'm like, I'm a video TV expert. That's my little area in this content universe, right? If someone Googled me today, what would they learn in 10 seconds? And would I be recognized as a leader, right? What would they learn? And again, how much content are you putting out there to try and drive this conversation? Do I have signature stories I can tell on a stage or a podcast? When I say signature stories, when I talk about Manal or when I talk about Mission Impossible or these are my stories. They're my stories, but they all connect back to the overall theme. What are your stories? And have I built my own visibility assets? Do I have enough videos out there? Do I have enough photos out there? Have I created content that positions me? So it's worth just for yourself. Have you done this? Do you have this? Do you need more help with this? Because you need to start being more out there, because if you're not visible, you're invisible. So, what is your gap? Have a think about what your gap is and also share it. I'm a big believer of sharing these things with other people, because if people know what your goals are, there's a much higher chance that they're going to hold you accountable to getting them done. But the key question I always say is, what do you want to be known for, right? When I bumped into Vuk this morning, he said he doesn't quite like it when people say he's the CEO, he's the founder, but he is the podcast guy or the podster guy, right? That's what he's known for, right? I happen to know Jan and he's the streaming guy, so like, who are you, right? What do you want to be known for? Because that's what people remember, and that's how you're able to position yourself. And also have a think, you're best positioned to serve the person you used to be. So lately, I've realized that I'm doing a lot of talks like this because I think about 8-10 years ago, you wouldn't have seen me anywhere. I literally was very, very comfortable behind the camera, very comfortable. And then I realized all the things that I'm sharing with you today, that no one cares. And especially running my own business, I have to be out there. And so when I say you're best positioned to serve the person you used to be, I used to be someone who never put myself out there. And I used to be someone who actually looked down on it. Like, what's she doing out there? Like, it's vanity. Why is she doing it? But now that's completely shifted. Now it's business development. Now it's in my diary every day. My LinkedIn post is in my diary every day, because I know that the more visible I am, the more opportunities I'll attract. So I started to do it. I really started to get out of my own way, and I started to just put myself out there. And I think I'm going to come to a question shortly about what may be getting in your own way. But also something for you to realize is people follow people, not logos, right? So it is always about the individual. I think most people here know Stephen Bartlett, and he's spoken in the region a number of times, but something that stuck with me from one of his recent talks is he said, content creation is the new networking. And that really stuck with me, because I believe he said that he actually removed his sales team and replaced them with individuals who are helping to grow his personal brand and making sure he was booked on more stages and making sure more content was out there. That's how significant and important your content is. And it works. Like, if you look at his own following, and not just him, I'm going to go through a few examples. Like, the companies have a significantly smaller following than any of the individuals. Everyone from Stephen Bartlett to Richard Branson to Elon Musk to Gary Vaynerchuk, it doesn't matter who you follow. all of them, their companies are significantly smaller following than the individual. So then you need to think to yourself, what are you doing to get your following up? And it's not about the vanity metrics. It's about attracting the opportunities because you're more visible and you're top of mind. Anyone know the number one industry that benefits from visibility, specifically from video? It is medical. It is medical because ultimately video builds trust, right? It builds trust. And the health industry and the medical industry, if anyone ever has a pain, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to Google, they're going to call a friend, they're going to try and understand, right? And the more content they can find about the ailment or the doctor, then the higher the trust is going to grow. But I would say it's not just doctors. I would say, as I said earlier, it's anyone who deals in the confidential space. So it could be an accountant, it could be an auditor, anyone in that space. So how do you get started? I would say one commitment at a time. So I want to quickly ask, what is holding you back? Okay, I don't believe this is going to work. Okay, I'm not sure this is going to work right now, but my questions for you are, what is holding you back from growing? Who here has ever said that, you know what, I'm just not comfortable on camera? Anyone said they're not comfortable on camera? A few people. Who here has ever said, it's just too difficult, it just takes too much time, it just takes too much time, right? Who here has ever said, I just don't know where to begin. I honestly, I don't know where to begin, right? Who here has ever said, there's so much content already out there, what am I gonna add to this? What is there, right? Okay. Who here has resonated with everything I've just said? Genuinely, most of us, these are all limiting beliefs we have in ourselves, right? And you have to find ways to grow out of them. You have to find ways to grow out of them because that is what is holding you back and they're personal. No one else cares, right? And I realize this for me, I'm actually a very self-conscious person. People think I'm super confident. Oh, I'm confident in my subject matter. But I'm still one of those people who's like, oh, do I look okay? Is everything all right? You know? But I realize no one cares. You know, no one cares if I've gone more gray this week. No one cares if I've put on more weight this week. As long as you've learned something from the content that I'm putting out there, that's all that matters. So my number one message is you need to focus on the content. Focus on educating or entertaining. I personally find entertaining very difficult. So focus on educating if you've got that knowledge, and you'll see that that's why people are consuming your content. But I have just a couple of quick things for you to think about. Is just get clear, get out of your own way. Do what you can to reach your target audience, own your space, and that's when you're going to watch the opportunities pour in. So to break this down, figure out why you're doing this. Figure out why you're creating content. What does success look like to you? What is your objective of doing it? There's a very big difference between wanting to attract a sale or wanting to grow a community. Your objective is different. Have a clear visibility goal. Most people don't have a clear visibility goal on what they're trying to achieve. And get the support to get out of your own way. If you are struggling to get on camera, get help. If you're struggling with the tools on how to do it, get help. If you need a podcast space, get help. You know, find the tools that will help you get out of your own way because this is something we all need to be doing. Reaching your target audience, right? Figure out who your target audience is. I know mine. I know mine are business owners, they're experts in an area. I know mine. Who are yours, right? If you know who you're speaking to, that's all that matters. And just a very random thought, I learned something a few years ago that made a huge difference to me, is that a third of the people in your life are going to love you, a third of the people in your life are going to hate you, and a third of the people in your life are like, they're okay. And the minute I learned that, I'm like, I'm only creating content and speaking to the third of the people who I resonate with and who are going to learn something from me and who I love. The 2/3, I love you, thank you, that's good. So you're not speaking to everyone, you're speaking to your target audience. And if people don't like you, that's fine. They'll go find their own audience, right? So you're just speaking to your own audience. Own your space. Learn how to stand out in your space. Be seen as that expert. And I would again say, what is that niche, the specific niche that you want to be in? Because we are in a universe where everyone's an expert. So how can you show them that you're credible in this specific area? And only then will the opportunities come in. But I'm also going to say, learn to say yes. Right? Because that's another big one. Every time something came up, I would always be like, no, not me. I've got much better at it, right? I've got much better at it because when you say yes, that's when you put yourself in these situations, in these positions. And the last 2 months, I've pushed myself to be extra visible. Like the last 2 months, I'm everywhere. And so when I see people, like, I mean, Vuk just said to me, oh, I feel like I just saw you. I haven't seen him in over a year, but it's like, I feel like I just saw you. Because I'm literally putting myself out everywhere. Everywhere. Every stage, every talk, every event, but why? I'm doing it with a purpose, right? I'm doing it with a purpose because I had a program I was trying to promote, and it worked. It worked because people saw me. But what was the outcome? The main thing is visibility gets visibility. So the more you're out there, the more people see you in a specific light, the more you're likely to get more opportunities in that light, right? More people see me speak, I'm going to get more speaking. The more people see me train, I'm going to get more training. So you need to educate people on what it is you want to achieve from your content so that you ultimately start attracting it, right? And for me, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. So because the last 8 years or so, I'm pretty comfortable in this area. So what's the next thing that's out of my comfort zone? And for me, it's Arabic. So I am Arabic, I speak in Arabic, but my Arabic sucks. Like, I mean, it's not, I wouldn't put myself out there in the Arabic media. So whenever I get asked, I was like, but during Ramadan, I said yes to a whole hour interview in Arabic. I can't begin to tell you how nerve-wracking it was, because I was like, you know what, I'm telling everyone to push themselves out of their comfort zone all day long. I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone and do this. It wasn't that bad. You know, yes, there were a few grammatical errors here and there. Yes, there were things that didn't go to plan, but it taught me that, you know what, you just have to keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. And not just that, just this weekend, we happen to be producing a show called The Final Pitch, which is a cross between Shark Tank and The Apprentice. And a conversation happened a few months ago about on-screen mentors, as in appearing on screen. And they said, oh, Reem, you should be an on-screen mentor. And I promise you, once upon a time, I would have been like, no, I'm happy behind the camera. But I just went, yeah, I'll do it. And we filmed it this weekend. And honestly, I felt there was a moment where I was like, what am I doing? But same thing. The minute I started and I realized, I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. I'm leaning in on my knowledge. It was fine. And it's just by continually saying yes and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone that you're going to start to attract even more new opportunities. So I think I have a slight funnel, which is basically I want you to focus on what can you do to be seen and heard? What can you do to be respected as a thought leader? And then ultimately that will help you get access to new opportunities and where you want to go. And thank you all so much for your time. I truly appreciate it.